Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host as always. And continuing our Get to Know series, today I am joined by Chris Trevin, who covers the USC Trojans for the Peri Style and 247 Sports. Best in the business. If you guys are USC fans, go check them out. Chris, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Steven. Thanks for having me on here. I didn't expect that intro video to go so hard, though.
We paid somebody on Fiverr to do it, and they did a great job. So can't complain there.
You got your money's worth for sure. But thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate that, and appreciate you jumping on tonight. So Chris is going to help us kind of dive into Tuli Tuipulotu's background here a little bit. Obviously, Tuli spent 3 years at USC, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fun stories here. Before we get to Tuli and his story a little bit, Chris, I'm curious to get your thoughts. USC had a bunch of players drafted this year. Did you have a favorite landing spot of any of the Trojans from last week?
Ooh, a favorite landing spot. Well, I think the obvious choice is with the wide receiver and the cornerback, Jordan Addison and Mekhi Blackman, both getting to continue on as teammates with the Minnesota Vikings. I do like that. Always love to see two guys go to the NFL together. And Mekhi Blackman was the guy who lined up every day against Jordan Addison. So, Addison was telling that war room, you have to go get this guy. He's a dog. I think he's a steal, and he really helped his draft stock. But also, low key, Andrew Voorhees getting drafted by my hometown Baltimore Ravens out there in Maryland. I think that's a great pickup. Obviously, that injuring that ACL during the draft process was very, very tough, but he is a fighter, and they're getting a steal and a great player in Andrew Voorhees who's going to pay off down the line.
Yeah, I'm up here in Fresno, so there was a lot of sadness when Andrew tore his ACL at the combine. I think meniscus as well, but typical Ravens, man. Taking a chance on an injured guy. I'm sure they'll get big returns on him. So wish him nothing but the best. So we'll get started here with Tuli Tuipulotu's background story. Obviously from Lawndale. So we want to go back here and talk about his recruiting. Was it always kind of a no-brainer that USC was going to be his choice, or was there a late push that maybe concerned USC fans with his recruitment?
Yeah, to understand Tuli Tuipulotu's recruitment, you also have to understand the context of his older brother Marlon, who was a very high-profile recruit in his own right when he was coming out of high school, and they were actually coming out of Oregon. So Marlon and them, the family was up there in Oregon, and he was actually committed to play at Washington. Marlon was. And then USC pulled a really late flip, kind of in the middle of the night, stole away Marlon Tuipulotu, and he committed to USC, and the family moved down here. And that's why Tuli was down here up in Lawndale. So if Marlon had stuck with Washington, chances are Tuli was going to play for the Huskies as well. And I'm sure Washington fans are still not happy about Marlon Tuipulotu going to USC. That was a big controversial recruitment going on there. But Marlon signed with USC, the number one defensive tackle in his class, 5-star guy. So all the hype was around Marlon. And to be fair, Tuli was, a 4-star prospect in our rankings, but he wasn't considered, a highly touted prospect. He was always Marlon's little brother, when you have a 5-star older brother, and Tuli was just, the younger brother. And, I remember the first time I went out to see him when he was at Lawndale, they had won a state championship his junior year, and I went out to see him, and I was just blown away by how, big he was and how, a man amongst boys he was up at Lawndale. And they were out there for a homecoming game, and they were playing against Beverly Hills High School, which was a very bad high school. So Tuli was just bullying people, and he was pulled by the first after the first half because they were just beating up on them so bad. But yeah, Tuli was always going to go to USC, and I think that's why he didn't get a lot of high-profile offers out of high school. He had Nebraska, I think he had Tennessee, but for the most part, he had just maybe 11 offers or something like that. But obviously, what he turned into now, you're thinking this guy should have had 30 plus offers. Every conference in the country should have been after SEC, Big Ten. He should have had all those offers based on what he did in college. But I think a lot of the college coaches were yeah, he's just gonna go play with his brother Marlon. So there's no reason to waste our time recruiting him. I remember talking to him, and he was like, Yeah, I'm really open to the process. It sounded like he really wanted to be open to the process, but everyone knew he was going to end up at USC. The Polynesian culture, staying close to family and all that, and he did want to play with his older brother once again. So yeah, it just made sense, and I think everyone knew that he was going to go there, so everyone didn't try to recruit him. But yeah, USC was very lucky that it ended up being a situation where they could not put that much effort in recruiting Tuli and still get him for that 2020 class.
Yeah, I mean that whole thing of like playing with your brother. They only did it for the one season though, right?
Yeah, it was just the one season they were together.
So Tuli would have been, was he a freshman when they moved to California, or was he even younger than that?
I believe he was younger than that. I believe he moved when he was about a sophomore or going into his junior year because he played at Lawndale his junior year, won the state championship, and then he played his senior year. So he spent only like 2 years playing high school there.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Um, so with Tuli also, like I think it's really interesting. I mean, obviously the NIL stuff, the transfer portal, it's a huge deal now, right? I mean, obviously you guys benefited from that and with getting Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams and Mario Williams and all these guys, right? How did USC go about keeping him, or was it kind of the same thing? He was just never going to leave, because I feel like if he had entered the portal after two great seasons, like he would have had a lot of bigger offers, maybe potentially. So was there ever a consideration for him to transfer, or was that just kind of he's sticking around no matter what?
Yeah, I think it was more a sense that he was sticking around no matter what. I never heard anything about like, because you hear whispers, especially in this day and age, you'll hear like,
Right.
hey, so and so, I think, they're looking at a transfer. Oh, I'm hearing, this person's not happy with the playing time or they want to look for better opportunities. Never heard that about, Tuli. And Tuli also came up in a just slightly before like the portal craze really started to get going. So would that have been the case a little bit further down the line if he had been like around more portal hecticness? Maybe, but for the most part, I don't think he ever would have left because that's just not Tuli's personality. He's very low key, doesn't want to be kind of in the center of attention. He's very laid back, and it doesn't really fit a guy who wants to seek that attention and go out and put themselves out there. He was a Trojan from the beginning, and he was going to end it as a Trojan, and he was going to stick to it no matter what, and that's what he did.
Yeah, well, I'm sure his family is happy they don't have to move again. You're getting to stick with the Chargers, obviously. I don't know if you saw, but the Chargers did like their first video with Tuli. You talking about his low key personality. Tuli wasn't even watching the draft. He was just like hanging out and like having a good time with his family, and then got the call, and then they turned on the draft so they could see the announcement there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked whatsoever. Not whatsoever. That is Tuli to a T. Just be in the background. Obviously one of the most talented players on that roster, but does not act like a superstar or anything. That's very him. And I will say, Tuli's credit, I did want to mention that when Tuli first got to USC, he was like not shy, but like he was very much in his shell. Didn't really, give much in interviews. But like by the end of his time at USC, he was voted a team captain. His transformation and his like media savviness was just 180. He was just so well spoken and comfortable in front of the media because he would get a lot of media around him. He would command a big scrum because he was a star defender, and he really grew as a talker and a leader. And I just wanted to give him some credit for that because he has had one of the biggest like media turnarounds I've ever seen in terms of, and not just necessarily a turnaround. He was just a young kid who's not used to all the attention, and you have to
Yeah.
grow and learn in that. So I do want to commend him for that and the work USC did and their media people because he became a really good speaker at the end and really comfortable in front of the camera.
Well, and his background too, right? Like, you mentioned him kind of living in Marlon's shadow a little bit growing up. Like, he's probably was just kind of not used to like being the guy that people wanted to talk to all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of brings me to his freshman season because when he first got on campus, he wasn't a spring enrollee. He wasn't a mid-year enrollee. He came in the summer. And a little more context on that class. That class was really, really bad for USC. It was like ranked 70 in the country. All the fans were like so mad at Clay Helton, the former coach, because that's not a USC recruiting class. You think USC recruiting, you think like top 10, top 5 or whatever. So this class was terrible and they weren't really excited about it. And Tuli was kind of like an afterthought coming in the summer. And I remember initially everyone was like, okay, that's not Tuli Tuipulotu, that's Marlon's little brother. But slowly but surely, other players began to take notice, like, okay, this isn't Marlon's little brother. This is like Tuli Tuipulotu. He's becoming his own person. And you saw glimpses of that when he got there in the summer and summer workouts and stuff and fall camp. And it became clear he was going to play as a true freshman. But like by the end of that season, that 2020 season, it was, yeah, he's not Marlon's little brother. He is Tuli Tuipulotu, his own person.
Yeah, I remember him well. He ended Utah's 2020 season before it even began after he tackled Cam Rising. That was not a fun night, but it's all good with Tuli. Um, Obviously, this past season, I want to dive into a little bit of kind of on the field stuff. Like, it's such an interesting profile to me because you watch, the USC tape against Stanford, and Tuli is lining up as a nose guard. He's lining up as a 2 tech, a 3 tech. And then you watch him against Washington State, and he's getting 4 sacks as a pure edge rusher, standing up from a 2-point stance. Was that something that kind of tweener, hybrid role? Was that something that evolved because of Alex Grinch's scheme? Was it a role that they specifically designed for Tuli, or how has that kind of come about for his play on the field?
Yeah, Grinch's scheme is likes to get creative, likes to create those confusing packages and throw different stuff at a quarterback to confuse them and all those sorts of things. And I'm not necessarily it was I don't think it was necessarily made for Tuli, but just having someone as versatile as Tuli, Alex Grinch was like, this is a guy I have to use in a multitude of ways. And if you look at that defense last year, they really struggled by the end of the year. It was not a great defense, but Tuli was obviously one of those bright spots leading the nation in sacks. So they just tried to get the most they could out of Tuli, whether that was kicking him into nose tackle, making him a 3 tech, rushing him off the edge of the stand up, putting his hand in the ground, dropping him back into coverage like a linebacker. They just tried to do so much with him because they didn't have a ton of talent on that defense and a lot of people that could consistently get to the quarterback like him or impact the game like him. So they were kind of just forced to use him in a multitude of ways and throw the kitchen sink at offenses and this is our guy and we're going to do what we can to move him around and, give us the best chance to win, even though the best chance for them to win was truly getting to the quarterback consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. You read a lot of his draft profiles, right? And like some people might have him as a defensive lineman, like interior rusher. Other guys are like, no, he's an edge rusher. What would you say is his best role in the NFL? Do you think he can like be a true like stand up outside linebacker? Or do you think he needs to be able to kind of rotate inside from time to time?
It's interesting because obviously the Pac-12 and the NFL are two very different things, and Tuli would, bully people at times when they would kick him into inside. He obviously would need to add more weight to be able to move him back and forth between inside. And I think he is a pure edge rusher for the most part. I think that's where his strong suit is. Can he do, kind of an outside linebacker role, excuse me? Yeah, I think he could. I think his athleticism is a little bit underrated. I know he doesn't have like elite athleticism, but for the most part, I think he's a really good athlete. So I could see him doing that. But again, I just think you need to let him go after the quarterback, whatever that may be in the Chargers scheme. Get him in positions where he is getting after that backfield because he makes plays in the backfield. He's consistent in bringing down the quarterback and getting to the running back. 22 and a half tackles for a loss. He just kept getting better and better and better at it. So I wouldn't try to get too gimmicky and maybe make him a coverage guy or anything like that. Like because I know the fans really hated when Alex Grinch would drop him into coverage. Do what Julie does best, and that's get to the quarterback. So for me, it's you got to make him an edge rusher. You got to put his hand to the ground, maybe stand him up, whatever that may be. Yeah, I would kick him inside at times because he has that versatility. He would need to add a little bit more weight to handle, interior NFL offensive linemen. But for the most part, number one's got to be just Tuli, go get the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that for sure. All right, Chris, last question here. I was like asking this. Did you have any maybe fun stories from Tuli, whether it be kind of a one-liner he dropped or something like that? Any kind of highlight from your media scrums with Tuli?
I don't think there's anything like one-liner that sticks out, but Tuli was always like not super. He was very surprised that we wanted to talk to him because he would get picked for how USC media works. You put like people's name down who you want to talk to at the end, and Tuli was obviously consistently among those people. So I would always remember he wouldn't love to get picked all the time. Sometimes you just had a long practice, but he was a team captain, so his obligation was to be a guy who stands up from the media and talks. But I remember times where he would be he'd get picked, way to the side, be leaning against the thing, and then like 15 people would come up, and he's like, "Are these all for me? Are these all for me?" Yeah, people would like to talk to him, and then he'd always, like I said, he grew as a guy talking in front of the media, but he also liked to get out of there real quick. When everyone was done, he was like, "Okay, that's it. Okay, bye," and he would rush off and get his post game smoothie or whatever. But he had a fun personality. I like to see his personality come out more as he grew. Like I said, he was kind of reserved, didn't really show a lot, but by the end, he would crack a little jokes and show up. She has a great smile. He would show that off, and he would mess with teammates while they were doing interviews and stuff. So definitely saw his personality come out at the end of his career as he got more comfortable.
Well, he'll fit right in with Justin Herbert then, because Justin Herbert loves to duck out of media sessions, and I'm sure he would be happy with never doing them if he could. So, Chris, this has been awesome, man. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us tonight. Chargers fans, make sure and follow Chris on Twitter if you're a USC fan or know a USC fan. Send them his way at Chris N. Trevino on Twitter, and the Peri Style website that covers the Trojans for 247 Sports. Chris, thanks so much, man. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Steven.